All right. So let's talk a little bit about transitions. Finally, this is where things get pretty. So when you hover over Trump and Hillary, like they just pop to like their new styles, right? If only there's a way to make them gradually change. Well, there is, and it's called transitions. So the way transitions work is you target the base element, you give it a transition property, what you want to change and for how many seconds, and then you create a new hover CSS like property, and then you change it on that. I know that didn't make any sense, but it will in a second. So let's first target Hillary. Don't think we have a plain Hillary. Okay, cool. So, step one, again, algorithms. Everything's easy if you follow algorithms, right? Anyone could be a professional chef if they follow instructions, right? Like, oh, you cooked so amazing, how'd you do it? Read the instructions, follow them to a T, and that's it. You get amazing food, right? So, same thing with programming. You follow algorithms and you get to where you're going. So, step one, target the original element and give it a transition property. Step two. So let's do that. So the original element is Hillary. The transition. Boom. All right, awesome. Step two. Give the transition property a value. Give the transition property what you want to, the properties you want to transition, and how long it should take. Woo. So give the transition property that you just created, so here, the properties you want to transition and how long it should take. So we want to change the color. So color. And how long? 2 seconds. Awesome. So do we also want to change the font size? Then I believe you just add a comma and then do font size. We'll do that in 3 seconds. You can mix and match. All right, step 3. Give your target a hover pseudo class with those properties from step 2. So we've already done that. We've already targeted Hillary. So give your target a hover pseudo class. So our target was Hillary. We're giving her the hover pseudo class, and it has those properties that we changed. Notice here, color, and then font size and font size. Awesome. So let's check it out. Refresh. Ooh. Right? Pretty interesting. Thanks for the round of applause. Trump transition, and for him we did the color. So we can change color in 1 second. The text. I don't think text decoration works. 3 seconds. Let's do that. Yeah, font size. Font size of 1 second. So refresh. So we got Hillary, and we got Trump. Yeah. So the text decoration doesn't know how to handle that yet. So like does it from the middle and then make a bar like that. So they haven't decided it. There's some properties that just can't be transitioned, but already it's looking a lot better, right? like if you hover over these input boxes, you could have those transitions get a little bit bigger, which looks nice. So why don't we do that? We'll do anything with a class of input. So dot input on hover. So you hover over anything with a class of input. We'll do width of 110%. Let's see if this works. Height of 110%. And then we'll add the transition property to the original element. This is step 1. Target original element and give it a transition property. So the original element meaning the one without the hover pseudo class. So transition, and then step 2, give the transition property the properties you want to transition and how long they should last, how long it should take. So what do we want to transition? Well, the width of 2 seconds and the height of 2 seconds. That is not at all what I wanted. Maybe if I set the, oh yeah, that kind of is what I said it should be. If I do width of 100%. 100%. So there we go. Woo. It gets wider, but not taller. Because it doesn't quite make sense to get taller. Here, let's make the width 200 pixels and the height 30 pixels. I'll change the width to 250 pixels and the height to 50 pixels. See what we get. Ooh, there we go. That's a lot better. And of course, the font is still the same size, so that's really fun. So why is that? My question is, how tall is... So when I set this white box with the ID of ballot equal to 50%, 50% of what? What does that mean, 50%? What is that? Well, it's 50% of its parent, and the parent is currently the window. What would happen if I set the, what would happen if I set the height to 100%? Would it stretch? A, stretch to fit the whole screen. B, stay as is. Well, it would B, stay as is, because there is no height to a web page. They're infinite. You just keep scrolling, right? Just keep going and going. So, like further down, you have to keep going. So, they have really no concept of height, but they do have a concept of width. So here the screen's shrinking, but still the height is infinite, so to say. All right. Cool. So by default, the height is already 100. So you don't need that. So, cool. Questions? Transition property? Anyone like it? Anyone a fan? No? Everyone hates it? Okay. Yeah. You see it, but very subtly. It's like there are very little changes. Let's have some fun. This beat is sick. Captain America Shield. Do you know what I'm going to do? No, because I don't even know what I'm going to do. Just kidding. So I'm going to make the shield just rotate forever. Or using the, like when you hover over it, it could rotate. Ooh, that's more fun. Add like Easter eggs in there. I'm a fan. I dig it. Copy. So, get out of here. So, we'll make it even above the ballot, maybe? Or right at the top. Right above who's going to run this. Image. We'll give it an ID of shield. I think that's right. And I'm going to target anything with the ID of shield. Give it a height of 50 pixels, width of 50 pixels. It should be a square either way. Hey, look, there it is. What is that? Whatever, the whole thing will spin. So when you hover over it, shield, transform, rotate, 360 deg. Let's see what happens. Oh, let's do 180. So, what's that? Good catch. So, when I refresh it and I hover over it, oh, did I not give it a pseudo class? Oh, I didn't. Hover. There we go. So now it's right side up. Hover. Boop, 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 boop. Right? Ooh, it kind of looks like it's spinning if I do it quickly. But so this transform property, it allows you to rotate, to skew, to stretch, a lot of things. CSS transform. It's really fun. I always used to get transform and transition mixed up, but they're completely different. So with transform, you can rotate, you can do a lot, like scale things, stretch them out, rotate in 3 dimensions. What? So here, let's play with this. So boom, skew X, 20 degrees, and so on. So a lot of fun stuff you can do with transform. You could invert, rotate 3D, rotate Z. Doesn't look like the Z-axis. So, a lot of fun stuff. So, let's say when you hover over it, let's make it go gradually. So, I'm going to do step 2, give the transition property, or kind of step 1 part B, give it a transition property on the original element. So the original one is shield, transition. Step 2 is add every property you want to change and how many seconds. So I want to do the transform for 3 seconds. So refresh it. Now when you hover over it, woo, in 3 seconds it'll rotate 180 degrees. And when you take it off, then it'll go back. Cool stuff. I want it to go 1 second and like 1,800. Can you do that? You can do whatever you want. Woo! So it calculates all of that automatically. Now notice how it goes like a little bit slower in the beginning, speeds up, and then slows down again. You can change that as well. Those are, I think, timing. Let's make this CSS transition. Transition functions. Timing functions, that's what it is. So transition timing function. So here there are different things you could do. So you could declare how many steps it should take. So this in 4 steps. This step end, goes from start to finish. Ease, I think, is the default one where it goes really slow and then fast and then slow. like it eases, and then linear is just the same speed throughout, which I kind of like. You don't want it to have that like speed up and slow down thing. Refresh. There, and now it doesn't like go slow and then fast and then slow. That's a bit much. So that's also fun. I wonder how you can make it infinite. I don't know. That you could do with another library, which I'll show you later. Definitely get into that. There are a lot of these animations that are pre-made. I'll just show you what it looks like. Animate.css. So let's say you want any of these animations, boing, or fade in down. Woo. Woo. Hinge. So these are all little animations that people created, and it's just CSS. Like people went in and they like hand coded every step. So at like 0.01 seconds, like rotate this way and like get a little bit bigger. So these people went in and they did that for you, so you don't have to. It's great. It's an open source project on GitHub, so you can contribute and add to it. Really cool stuff. And the way it's done is with animations. So if you want to make your own custom animations, then check out CSS animation. It's a pain, but you have full control over what your animation does. So if you wanted to do that, go from the left to the right and rotate halfway through. This is lagging. So that's CSS animations, which I'm not going to teach because we could spend like literally weeks playing with animations and seeing who comes up with the coolest one. So that's transitions. That was the main point of that. So when you hover over it, it just rotates, makes it kind of fun. Or ease is what it is by default. Fun stuff, makes your website a little bit more interactive. A lot of times you see this expanding thing on like navigation bars. All right, questions about anything? Awesome. If you want to learn a little bit more about transitions, W3's rules, transition, pretty fun. They give you examples of everything. Let me show you how to do it. So, fun stuff. All right. Went over all that. All right, we'll go over one of these. This is probably the hardest thing about CSS, positioning, like getting something to where you want it is the biggest pain in the butt. So we'll start off with the first position, static. These are the 4 positioning things: static, relative, absolute, and fixed. You don't really need to memorize them. Just maybe know that there are 4 and know like a tiny bit about them. So static is default, really. I don't even know why it's called a position, but static is default. That's all you need to know. I think I have, yeah, if you click on this link here, I wrote it so that anyone could explain it. So here, static, default, not positioned in any way, based on page flow, right? So if you insert like a div and then after that an H3, it'll go below it, another div, that'll go below it. Like an image and then some text, it'll go side by side. So it's just the normal page flow. Now, next, I don't want to go over relative. Let's go over fixed. So fixed is just think navbar. When I say fixed, you think navbar, right? When you scroll, the navbar stays. That's fixed. Doesn't go anywhere. So why don't we make a fixed navbar for this? So let me go give ID navbar. I will add button here, and we'll target our ID of navbar. We'll give it a background of launched almond. We'll give it a height of, who cares? Let's see what this looks like. Hey, there we go. So you can click here, 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 here. Let's center those bad boys. I'm going to put them all in their own div with an ID of nav btns. And I'll target nav btns and say margin 0 auto. Ooh, we learned about margin 0, or we learned about margin. So what is a 0 in auto? So again, very similar to how you could say border 2 pixels solid red. You could do the exact same thing by saying border with 2 pixels, bordered style solid, and border color red, right? Everyone understand that those do the exact same thing? So this can also be done in a shorthand way. So if there are only 2 arguments, so 0 and auto, the 0 is for the top and bottom, so it's going to have a margin on the top and bottom of 0, and the margin of on the left and right of auto. And auto will just center it. So it'll automatically say that whatever's on the right should be whatever that's on the left. So that is the exact same thing as saying margin left auto, margin right auto. The exact same thing, no difference. Do you have to put 0 pixel here? Do you have to put px? Riddle me this. 0 pixels is the same thing as 0 meters. Or 0 teaspoons is the same thing as 0 feet. Yeah, because 0, 0. Like, I know the units don't make sense, but 0, 0. Like, nothing is nothing. Nothing is still nothing. So you could put 0 pixels, 0 feet. It doesn't matter. 0 is still 0. So you could have pixels there if you want, but you really don't need it. That's why it's a margin 0 auto trick and not the margin 0 pixel auto trick. You don't need to have units if you're dealing with 0. So lines 17 and 18 do the exact same thing as line 15. But which one would you rather have? That's right, line 15. Take that out, and I'll do that. All right, so, and why you know center? Buttons. Oh, I could just do text align center. Get out of here, get out of here. Alright, margin 0 auto, text, align, center. And that will center all my buttons because they are inline elements. Just kidding. What is wrong with you guys? Alright. Oh, because I'm targeting nav buttons and not the nav bar. Is that what you're gonna say? Yeah. So it's fine to have like extra stuff there. It won't do anything because I never use it. You don't get an error or anything. But yeah, good catch. So now, refresh it. Hey, we got our buttons. Awesome. So now when I scroll, notice the navbar disappears, and I don't want it to. Let me make my ballot much taller. So height of, I don't even know how high. Ooh, I'll show you this. 110 VH. Any guesses on what VH stands for? View height. And then VW, view width. Right. So that means that I'm pretty sure it's 100. From 0 to 100, that will be the, so view height and view width will break the height and the width of the screen, of the viewport up. So before, when I did 100% height, or like 120% height, it wouldn't do anything because it has infinite height. But the viewport has a finite height. So it'll break the viewport up to 100 pieces. And so if you say 80 view height, then that's saying like 80% of the viewport height. So I'll say 150 the height, just to make it a little longer, so we see what happens when we scroll. So what I want to do is I want this navbar to be fixed. I want it to stay there even when I scroll, right? So how do I do that? Well, it's very simple. All I do is go over, all I have to do is say position fixed. Position. Go. Then refresh. What? Alright. But the thing is, when I scroll, it stays there. Now, why is it like that? Well, because I never set the width of it. Position fixed has a few other little quirks to it, and I could easily fix that by saying width of 100%. And there you go. So now when I scroll, then I'm still able to click on these buttons. Let's say you want the navbar on the bottom. How do you do that? Well, when something has a positioning, you can say top, bottom, left, and right. So check this out. I could say bottom 0. And that's like pushing it away from the bottom 0 pixels. So check this out. Hey, there it is. And when I scroll, it stays there at the bottom. Again, the bottom 0 just says push it from the bottom 0 pixels. If you don't want it all the way at the bottom, let's say 20 pixels. Now it's going to be 20 pixels away from the bottom. And there you go. That's what gives it that space there. You could also do left and right. So it's top, bottom, left, and right. So if I made the width 80%, then notice that we have this big gap here, right? Let's say I wanted this whole navbar to go to the right instead. Then I could just say right 0. So that's like pushing it from the right 0 pixels, and now it's over on the right. But I'll put that on the top again. I always say top, 20 pixels. Now notice that it takes it out of the page flow, meaning that things can go behind it. Oh, that's kind of cool. So things can go behind it. It's like literally taking it out of the page and just like pasting it on top of like the glass of your monitor. So with that in mind, let's let's put it back with 100. So if you notice something, the shield here is behind the navbar. That's because everything scoots up. It gets taken out of the page flow, so you have to account for that. So one way to do it is check out how tall the navbar is. So I'm going to inspect it. And see that my navbar has a height of, let me check all the way here, of 25 pixels, right? It's 1,265 pixels wide and 25 pixels tall. So if I push my, my ballot down by 20 pixels, then that'll take care of everything. And it won't have that weird little clipping issue. So what I'm going to do is go to my ballot and say margin top 20 pixels. Just kidding, there is no margin top. So there are multiple ways to handle this. Another way, this is a very common issue. So what you can do is div ID of a like space and like nav space, and because that goes before the ballot, I could just target the nav space and give it a height HT of 20 pixels. This is another really common thing to do. And there you go. Now this is dropped a little bit to where it should be. Interesting stuff, a little bit. So let's say I wanted to make my navbar not in line with these buttons. What could I do? One word. So the question is, how do I make this navbar not so close to the buttons? Like, how could I push these buttons inward? Huh? Padding, yeah. So I'm going to give my navbar a bit of padding. So navbar, let's say padding 6 pixels. And there you go. Now they're not all the way up against each other. What if I wanted to space them out a little bit, like on the left and the right? How can I do that? How can I push them away? Margin, right? I could just target the margin left and right of each of them. So I can do right here. So I'm going to show you another, oops, how do I keep doing that? There we go. Another CSS selector. Oh, well, we only have buttons here. Yeah. So another CSS selector, I want to target every button that's in my navbar, right? Every child of the navbar that is a button. So how do I do that? Well, I first target the parent, which is navbar, and I want to target what from the navbar? Every button. So that way, you're only targeting the navbar buttons, and if I make a button, say down here, I'm not targeting that, right? This selector is only targeting the buttons inside of the navbars. So I'm going to say margin left 10 pixels, margin right 10 pixels. So all of them are going to have a margin on the left and the right of 10 pixels. And there you go. Now they're a little bit more spaced out. Okay. So this is just another selector. You might not understand any of the new selectors I taught you, but that's fine. You will in due time. My philosophy is that I will repeat things over and over and over again. If it's important enough, you'll memorize it, because I'm going to say it. Your brain's going to subconsciously pick up on it. All right. What do you mean 1 bar? Like, yeah.
Like have all your buttons
Uh-huh.
1 bar, but like have a border after each word.
What do you mean 1 bar? Without any margin?
Like in the W's, you know, the one
Do you want to post it on Slack? Oh, yeah, that's talking about floats. So, floats are the what? No, like you really shouldn't use floats because the only thing floats were invented for was for text wrapping. So here, let me show you. This one. So it was invented for wrapping text around an image. You know, like, I don't know, in any textbook they have like an image of like Sally doing something, and then the text like is next to it, and then it continues right below it. So that's what float was invented for. But what people use floats for now is not what it should have been. So Bootstrap answers that question. Like, Bootstrap is positioning, really. So let me show you. So let's add a whole bunch of add a paragraph, form. All right, so we have all this text. Right in between, I'm gonna add an image. That's fine. Give me an animal. Someone yell it out. Hurry. Penguin. Sorry, loudest one wins. First and loudest, but we got a penguin. That's a first for the penguin. This little guy. All right. Grab this guy. Let me do that part. That's it. Nice. Good call. Alright, so add our penguin. He's way too big, so I'm going to give an IMG height of 40 pixels. That's too small. That's fine. Whatever. So we have our penguin, but he's in page flow, which looks kind of bad, right? Like you generally don't have an image like dead center. So what you can do is float left. Hey, that looks a whole lot better, right? That's usually how images work. They're either the left or the right. So that's what float was invented for. What people use float for, I'll make one more JS spin and then we'll adjourn. Is this. We'll have a div with some lorem text, and we will just have just a mess of those. And we'll say a div width of 30%. So right now, they're stacking, right? Because divs are block elements and blocks stack. Hey, it makes sense. Block, stack. Okay, so what people were doing was, hey, they're all side by side, right? So no matter how big I make it, right? So it looks good. Don't do this. Forget I even showed you this, but don't do it. you will not get the desired results that you want. Bootstrap will take care of this. Bootstrap is a grid system which you define rows and columns to make everything make sense. But this is what people were using Float for, to make things go side by side, when in fact that's not what it was ever intended for, and people frown upon this. So yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. So the way Bootstrap works is Bootstrap will give you 12 columns. So the whole page can be divided into 12 columns max. They just said that why would you ever need more than 12 columns? And you could put whatever you want in those columns. You can make one column go across like 6 columns, and then another column go across 6. So then you have two columns that are the same width across the page. Does that make sense? So instead of having like 12, you have 2. Bootstrap CSS. Bootstrap is just a whole bunch of pre-written CSS. Yeah. So here we go. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Or you could divide it up this way, spanning 8 columns and 4, and then 4, 4, and 4, or if you want 6 and 6. So you could put one button here, one button here, button here, button here, and so on. So this is a much better way to make anything use a grid, because it's responsive. If you resize the screen, then you could specify on a medium screen, make this 1 column, or I guess this would make sense. On a medium screen, make this 8 columns. On a small screen, make it 12. So you can make that bigger on a small screen. We'll get into it, but that's kind of the whole idea of it. Here we go. So on an extra small screen, this column right here would go across the entire page, because 12 columns per row. On a medium screen, it would only go across 8, and this would go across 4. Will it do it? No. Oh, it was extra small. May have done it. Yeah, there we go. So now on an extra small screen, the column goes across the entire page, whereas on a medium screen, let me get to the medium. Is it not? Almost. There we go. So now, oh geez, there we go. So now it's side by side. So now, because we're on a medium screen, this spans 4 columns and this spans 8. So that's really what's going to save everyone. So if you're trying to do any of this positioning that is responsive, just wait. Yeah. So yeah, that's why you should never use floats. People think they're being clever, like, oh yeah, just make the width 33%, and then yeah. All right. Cool. Questions? Yeah. Great question. So, can you only have, where am I using margin? All right, here, yeah. So for margin, if you only have one value, then that's for top, bottom, left, and right. So all the way around. Oh, you know what? Why don't we do this? Why don't we do, if I go to the image, margin 10 pixels. Hey, it works. So let's check them out. So our image, hey, come back. Oh, the debugger. I always do this. Okay, good. Cancel. Refresh. Why is it so hard to get up? Okay. Awesome. All right. So get rid of that. Go away. And here we go. So if you have only one value for the margin, same thing with padding. If you only have one value for the margin, let me select my penguin. Elements. There we go. Awesome. So now we see that we have a margin of 10, 10, 10, and 10, right? All the way around. Let's see what happens if we do 10 and 20. Oh, we see on the top and bottom we have a margin of 10, and the left and right we have a margin of 20. Okay, what if we added 30? Like, what if we had 3 things in there? So we have top 10, left and right of 20, and then bottom of 30. Any guesses what 4 would be? Well, it would be like a clock. So top of 10, right of 20, bottom of 30, left of 40. That's because it didn't have anything to push off of, because there's nothing there. It's kind of like the whole idea of overlapping. You know how the margins overlap, but only if there's an element there? So because there's nothing above it, it doesn't push it away from the top. That's why. So again, the question was, if I didn't have this nav space here, and I just targeted the navbar, and gave it, let me refresh it, and the shield will pop up again. See how it's being cut off? And if I target the navbar and give it a margin top of like even 100 pixels, oh, that's the wrong thing. Yeah, the ballot. So margin, oops. Maybe let's go for that. Margin top 100 pixels. Or just see, refresh. Hey! Oh yeah, I guess it was overwriting. That's why. So top of, yeah, like however big it was. Yeah. So this would be top, auto, and then the bottom we could do 0. Yeah, good catch. So the ballot is like, padding. Yeah, like why is the nav bar being pushed down? Why are we there? Background, text line, position. But I want it to be fixed. I could just say navbar top 0. and then that'll, whoa, there we go. So that'll force it to the top. So yeah, that'll work. As for why it just started down, I don't know. We have a whole lot of commands in here. But yeah, so you're right, it does push it down. For instance, here, if I did a margin top 50 pixels, then it pushes away from the top of the screen. Cool. Does that answer? So I probably wouldn't do that. I kind of like the other way more of having like some little empty space there, just because to me that makes a little bit more sense. And if I want to add something like above the ballot, then like say I wanted to add like an H4, like hey there, then the hey there would be behind this. So that's why if I have an actual like div there, just taking up the space of it, then that makes a little bit more sense to me. Why are you in such a bad place? Is it the margin? Yeah, so that's what I would do. That's really why I wouldn't use the margin. But there are so many ways to skin a cat. And with programming, especially with positioning, CSS, family guide, nobody look. This is CSS. That really should just be CSS positioning, because it's such a pain. Duh. So that's what it's like. And then stuff like this, like CSS is awesome, right? Overflow. So fun. Hey, programming jokes. All right. Any other questions? Great questions. Great job tonight, guys. What was your guys' favorite part?